Hey guys, Megan here with Barn Besties. I am on location in sunny California. Sorry, Steph, look at the weather, it's magical. But I am here with Katie Schumacher, and we are at her beautiful farm, Shumacher Farms. So, our subscribers need to know, when did you start riding? How did you fall in love with horses? Give us a little background, Katie.
Yeah, so I probably started when I was maybe 6 or 7, and my parents had nothing to do with horses, knew nothing about horses. My mom likes to joke that she made the mistake of taking me to get a pony ride one day,
Yes.
And from then on there was nothing else I wanted to do. So there was a farm near my house that actually had Arabians, and I could ride my bike there and just started cleaning stalls and cleaning cobwebs and doing every odd job I could think of to try and get some time in the saddle, and really learned a ton about caring for horses and kind of lived at the barn. And
You were the barn rat.
exactly.
I love it.
Yep.
And your parents were supportive.
They were, yes. And I think they didn't anticipate having horses, and I think it was a challenge financially, but they were really supportive. They did everything they could to help facilitate that.
That's wonderful. And through high school, did you have a horse, or were you able to take lessons?
Yeah, so I was able to get a horse towards the end of middle school, and he was this old Arabian that didn't really know how to do much, but I absolutely fell in love with him.
Safe.
And yeah, I mean, maybe
Maybe not.
at his moments, for sure. I was definitely gravitated towards more of the project horses.
Yep.
And that's the only way I was able to do it. I didn't have the money to buy expensive or really nice horses, but I learned a lot, and it made me a much better rider.
And what discipline?
So I was actually showing the Arabian, so it's a combination of lots of different disciplines on that show circuit. So there's hunt seat, there's saddle seat, there's a little bit of Western, and actually one of my favorite classes was show hack, which it's still a group class, but they have collected, medium, extended of every gait. So it's kind of the most similar to dressage of any of the disciplines in the Arabian show world. And at the time, again, being in kind of rural Michigan, there weren't any dressage barns near me, but knew of it, followed it, always loved dressage, and was something that I knew I wanted to get into once I had the opportunity to.
And so then after high school, what happened?
Yeah, so I went to college at University of Michigan, and we couldn't afford to keep my horse while I went to college, so we had to sell the horse. But I joined the equestrian team there, and the equestrian team at University of Michigan is jumping. And
cool.
I'd done a little bit, but never really learned how to jump, so kind of learned to jump for those 4 years. And that was a fun challenge and a new adventure.
You would recommend it?
I would.
Jumping,
I think,
and it's the intercollegiate, correct?
I think it was a great experience in college. I think it's one of those things that it's easier to do if you get into it when you're younger. I think like skiing or any of those things that when you can go into it with absolute fearlessness as a kid, it's easier to excel. But I think there's still the same principles of horsemanship, and you learn a lot about distance and timing, and collecting the horse to sit back on their hind end. So it was great.
And you didn't go to college for horses, right?
No.
You went to college for
statistics and math.
You're smart.
It's debatable, but yes. So and then I tutored statistics and worked at the barn, and anytime I could to sort of just pay my way through college. And then in the summers, I took internships out in California.
Oh, cool.
And so that was the first time I had access to a dressage barn. And so that's when I started actually riding dressage for the first time. And again, there's so much overlap. I think if you're a horse person, a lot of it can be transferred.
We're connected, people.
Yes. But that's when I really got to start riding dressage. And then as soon as we graduated, we moved out to California full time. And then I started fully switched to dressage.
And this is not your profession, being a horse trainer, owning a facility, correct? You have a full-time job.
I do. So I am a professional, and I do have a few clients and give some lessons. But yes, I also have a full-time job.
Yeah, you do both. I mean, what is that like? I mean, it sounds like a lot of work.
It is, and I mean being a horse trainer full time is also a ton of work. It's just different. So for me, I kind of went through various phases. So at one point, I was a working student, and I have worked at barns full time. And there, you learn so much about horses, and I'm really glad I had that experience. And I kind of hit a point where I was deciding, do I want to stick with this fully, or do I want to create a slightly different path? And I found that for myself, the things that were always really important to me were being able to keep my horses the way I wanted to keep them. So if I felt like they need a day off, they need a week off, I can make that decision. If I think they need different tack, I can do that. If I think they should be living out in a big field all day, every day, I can make those calls. And I've had great clients. Not to say that you can't have that, but I've also had the experience where you build an attachment to a horse that you have in training, and there's something that you think they would benefit from, but it's not your horse, so you can't always make those calls.
It's hard. It's a hard balance.
And so for me, I felt like what I really wanted to prioritize was finding a way to give myself some financial stability.
Exactly.
So that I could make some of those choices, like having the horses at home and being able to own a few of my own horses and do what I wanted to do with them, and be able to make the numbers work to do that.
Exactly. And so is there, now looking back on your path, is there anything you would change? Or do you recommend this path?
I do recommend it, actually. I think it's always easy to look back and say, oh, if I'd done this differently, but I think all of those choices are what led us here.
Exactly.
And I am happy with the overall balance. I mean, it's a lot of hours. Sometimes it's very early mornings and late nights and working on weekends to make sure all the hours work. But at the end of the day, I am my own boss. And I do have a little bit more financial freedom and stability by having that full-time career. And so it's let me made some choices with the horses that I'm really glad I've been able to make.
I think that's such a good insight. I love hearing that, because it's the same amount of hours, wouldn't you say? I mean, if you're a horse trainer, you're still going to be working those same long hours.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I work with other trainers and coaches, and we all joke about, like, oh, we're all working Sunday, and obviously that's not to glorify that, right? Everybody needs to take breaks, but that's just how it is.
I think it's a wonderful option to share with our subscribers, and I wish I had thought about that when I was younger. Now that I know where I am at, that I thought it's one or all, right? Either you're going to be have the career and you're going to be the adult amateur, or you're the full-time professional. So this is such great insight. And so current present day Katie, what does it look like here? Tell us about your farm. How many acres? What services do you offer?
So we have about 5.5 acres here. We have 8 pastures, and all grass except for one dry lot, just in case there's a horse that can't be on grass. And we also have 8 stalls. So the way we have it set up, every horse is turned out all day, every day.
Wow.
We have a mix of some of my own personal horses. We have a couple boarders. I have someone who leases out one of my horses and takes lessons. And then there's another trainer that's here from Kansas for the winter who's in training. So we really do a mix of everything, and it's a great group. Everyone's really respectful of the property, of each other, works well together. So services, we take boarding, I give lessons. Like I said, other trainers can come in. We're small enough that it can be kind of flexible. It's just about someone that can appreciate the advantages that come with a smaller facility and having access to the turnouts, and can kind of fit in with the group here.
And last question, so as you went through college and started your career, did you start with like a business plan, or when you started to create this farm, did you come with a business plan and approach it with the numbers, thinking about the numbers? And tell us your thought process there.
Absolutely. So we moved down here almost 6 years ago, and before that we were living in Los Angeles and just renting an apartment. We'd never owned a home before, and I had one horse at the time. So, you know, I think using that experience of what we paid for board and, you know, what I paid at various places over the years, also my experience working at lots of different farms, I had that knowledge, but I also made a point to go and speak to every barn owner who was willing to really ask about their costs, what they would recommend, what they would do differently, just kind of observing around their property, what works, what doesn't work, things like that. And, you know, I knew what hay costs, every type of hay, shavings, labor, water, utilities, all of that, had a really strong sense of what those costs would be. And then when we started looking for property, we were really just looking for something with 5 acres. And we actually looked through everything south of Paso Robles. So a huge area.
That's huge.
But in our area in Los Angeles, trying to get that was just way more than we could afford. But this pocket here, there were a lot of properties that were much more affordable. And we were looking for a place that had a horse farm or horse facilities on it. We ended up finding this place, and it had the house. There was no barn, but it was mostly flat, and it was a great lot and had a lot of potential. But that meant that in addition to all of those costs of just running a barn, you know, there were building costs and permitting costs and grading and concrete and running electric. I mean, there's so many little things that if you just look up, you know, cost to build a barn, even the realtor, you know, he'll show us places and he'll be like, oh, you know, average cost is this amount per stall. That's just for the barn. There's so many other things you have to factor in. But yeah, we did an incredible amount of research to understand those costs before going into it.
And you also didn't build it all at the same time, correct?
That's right.
Like
we did stagger it a bit.
Right. So tell us just a little bit about that, because you had the house, but then how long did you have to wait before you were able to start building the barn and the pasture and the arena?
It was also slightly unfortunate timing because we moved in right before COVID. So that kind of slowed down everything. We had got an estimate from the barn manufacturer that said about 6 to 8 weeks delivery time for the barn. And I think that was October of 2019. And the barn ended up getting delivered in April of 2022.
No way.
So that's how long we had to wait.
What did you do?
And the worst part was it wasn't, it's going to be delayed 2 years. It was 2 more months. 2 more months.
Oh, that would kill them
the entire time.
Oh, no.
So that was really frustrating, you know, and you're trying to plan and understand, okay, well, when can we bring horses in? Luckily, we have great neighbors up here. There's lots of other people who were really happy to work with us. So I had my one horse at the time, and I had him over at a neighbor's place while we were building.
Community matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we couldn't really do anything about the barn. We just had to wait. But in the meantime, we built the arena. So we had to get grading and building permits first. So the permits also were a bit delayed because of COVID and because of everything going on during that process. But once we got the permits, did all the rough grade, brought in the sand, brought in the footing, the railroad ties, you know, all of that. I would say it probably ended up getting finished, I think, the end of 2020. And at that point, I brought my one horse home because then I had just an outside stall and an arena, and all of our neighbors have horses. So he could kind of be buddies with them.
How frustrating.
Yes.
That is so frustrating. But now it's kind of like a bloop. Right? Like,
now I mean, everything is done,
with.
It's working, it works great.
You're happy?
Yes.
All right, well, let's go on a barn tour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, you guys, hit the like button, make some comments, please share, definitely subscribe to our channel so we can continue to visit people like Katie, who is very generous with her time to show us her amazing farm. Thanks, guys.